Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the second learning session on the Pandemic Response and Safety Grants from the USDA. I am Stephanie Bloomhagen, Executive Director for Farms, and Felicity Merritt, Farms Program Manager, is with us as well today. This is the second session about the USDA Pandemic Response and Safety Grants. Our first session was held on September 16th, and we reviewed how to prepare for the application. Today, we're going to talk about the actual application itself, which is a very short, very uncomplicated application process. So a little bit of background. In early September, the USDA announced the availability of this new Pandemic Response and Safety Grant. The USDA and the federal government had initially provided some support for large-scale producers, some COVID relief support, especially the commodity support, or the Farms to Families Food Box program. But they got a lot of feedback that there wasn't enough resources directed toward the small-scale specialty crop producers. And so that's what this grant is for, is to help small-scale specialty crop producers, people who are growing fruits and vegetables and small livestock for farmers markets, CSAs, on-farm sales, producers that qualify as small businesses. I want to clarify that Farms is not paid by the USDA to do these workshops, nor do we have any additional information beyond what USDA has published. We are an education and support organization for sustainable agriculture in North Dakota, and so we serve the population that this grant is for, and we're confident that many of the small-scale specialty crop farmers we serve are eligible for this grant. And so this session is to encourage you to apply for this grant, to take advantage of these funds that are available to you to help mitigate any COVID-related expenditures you might have had. We want to raise awareness that this grant exists and help make it as easy as possible for you to apply. We are live streaming to Facebook, and the session is being recorded. I will pause and ask for questions at the end of each section. You can enter questions into the chat box if you're joining us on Zoom, or in the comments section on Facebook. And Felicity is monitoring the comments for me. So we have uploaded handouts from the USDA to our Google Drive, and that link is shared on our Facebook event, and Felicity will add that to the comment section of the Facebook live stream. This is just to make it as easy as possible for you to find resources about this grant. We also held a previous session on September 16th, where we reviewed how to determine if you're eligible and how to apply for a DUNS number. That session was recorded and is available at farms.org/webinars. From there, you can view the recording of the first session, you can view our slides, handouts, and you can go directly to the PRS grant page. And this will be updated with a link directly to the PRS grant application page soon. And today's webinar will also be posted to that page. Oh, I also want to make you aware, if you are a farmer's market or on the board of a farmer's market or affiliated with a farmer's market, the National Farmers Market Coalition is having a separate webinar, much like this one, tomorrow, about this grant and geared specifically for farmers markets. And there's information at the farmersmarketcoalition.org, this press release about their Pandemic Response and Safety Grant Program, and you need to register for that webinar. It is Wednesday, October 13th, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, which would be 1:30 Central Time. And I think Felicity will put the link to that in our Facebook. Just a brief review of what we covered in the last session to help you understand this grant and prepare. So the USDA has published a fact sheet about this grant, and that is, you can download that from the links that I shared with you. So who is this for? It is for small specialty crop producers, food processors, manufacturers, and distributors, and farmers markets. Specifically, entities that qualify as small businesses or those with a nonprofit 501c3 status. They have also extended this to other types of nonprofits, the other 501c categories. The minimum funding request is $1,500. The maximum is $20,000. There is no cost sharing or matching required. And what is this for? It is for to help you recover costs incurred by making adaptations for COVID-19 safety, including measures to protect workers. That includes workplace safety, such as cleaning supplies, thermometers, sanitizer, hand washing stations, masks, and other protective equipment, new signage or air filters, market pivots, such as developing and implementing online platforms if you're moving your sales online, creation of online or print materials to communicate to your customers about how you've changed your model and are pivoting, retrofitting facilities, such as for worker and consumer safety. So if you've installed or purchased protective barriers made of plexiglass or plastic sheeting, if you've set up a walk-up window, heat lamps or heaters so that people can be outdoors, fans, tents, propane, weights, tables, chairs, and lighting. Transportation is also eligible, especially to help maintain social distancing and worker and consumer safety. Additional transportation services for workers or new delivery routes or distribution services. Worker housing, additional housing resources to maintain social distancing or allow for quarantining. And then medical, providing health services to protect your workers against COVID-19. So this includes vaccinations, testing, or healthcare treatment of infected employees, including any paid leave due to COVID-19 infection. The application period opened on October 6th. So you can apply at any time now, and you have until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, which would be 10:59 Central, on November 22nd, 2021. And I want to be sure that you know where to find the application. The application page, Felicity is going to post it in the comments section. It looks like this. So this is the page that gets you to that has a summary of all the most relevant information about eligibility, DUNS registration, and this is where you click to apply when you are ready to apply. In order to apply, you need to prepare by first checking your eligibility and making sure you have a DUNS number. So let's talk briefly about eligibility, because we're going to, in order to fill out the application, you're going to need to know your NAICS industry code. Or if you are a farmer's market, there is an option to just check farmer's market. And we do have a link to more information in the Google Drive. And there is a sheet about a PDF about eligible applicants that is linked there. So all farmers markets qualify, as well as NAICS codes listed under crop production, as well as shellfish farming and aquaculture and apiculture, which is, I believe, honeybees. Obviously, in the central part of the continent, we don't need to worry about shellfish or aquaculture. Food manufacturing, subsector 311, and merchant wholesalers as well. So crop production includes dry pea and beans, potatoes, all vegetables except potatoes and melons. various fruits, strawberries. So most of us who are farmers market producers growing produce are probably going to fit under one of these, most likely other vegetable. And if you are growing multiple different crops, the FAQ section says, choose the one that is your highest source of revenue. So if your vegetable farming brought in the highest, if your market garden and vegetables brought in the highest source of revenue, that would be the one that you choose. I also want to point out that indoor production qualifies for this grant. So if you're growing mushrooms indoors or things like microgreens or growing in a high tunnel or a greenhouse, those are qualified activities for this grant. Also, processors count, so food manufacturers and merchant wholesalers of produce count as well. If you start at the main page here and you click check eligibility, that takes you to the page where you can find your subsector. And if you have questions, you can click on the US Census Bureau's codes and you can do a keyword search to help you find which sector you're in. For example, vegetable farming, 111419, vegetable farming grown undercover. So let's also briefly look at the DUNS number information. So when you fill out the application, you're going to be required to provide a DUNS number. And you may already have one of these if you have applied for federal grants in the past. If not, they have created a very simple application process to apply for a DUNS number. This is something that we went through in the last webinar in detail. So take a look at the recording for that. And the USDA has provided some recorded tutorial as well. But you start here and just go through this application process. Felicity, are there any comments or questions?
No questions from Facebook.
Okay, great. So we're going to move on to the application form itself. Once you have your industry code and your DUNS number, the application is very, very quick and simple. From that main page, you click apply, and it's going to take you to a screen that looks like this. You start by entering your DUNS number, and that is going to auto-populate. If your DUNS number has been approved and you've been awarded a DUNS number, as soon as you enter that 9-digit code, the rest of this is going to auto-populate based on the DUNS number you entered. So your business name, address. Here you need to select your eligible industry code. And on the next screen, I will show you a little bit what that looks like. And then whether you're a nonprofit with 501c3 status, without 501c3 status, or a small business. And then, of course, the primary and secondary contacts. It's going to ask you to select an NAICS industry code. I wasn't able to get a large enough screenshot for you to view that, but that is where what I showed you before, where you need to select your industry code before you start this application process. Knowing that code, you'll just select it from this drop-down menu. And farmers markets is its own option without an industry code. So if you are operating a farmers market, that is the code, the option that you would select from this drop-down menu. Once you've filled out page 1, then it takes you to Appendix B, which is where you identify how much you spent on each of the eligible activities. So workplace safety measures, say you bought boxes of masks. How much did you spend on those? And this is an estimate. You are not required to provide receipts. It is recommended that for your own purposes, you keep track of your expenditures and you have those records if in case the USDA were to ever request that information or audit you. But for the purposes of applying for the grant, you do not need to show the receipts. How much you're requesting in funding. They also ask you, this is optional, to provide the actual costs incurred. Maybe you spent more and you're not requesting the full amount. Maybe your total expenditures were over 20,000. But again, line C is optional. So you do that for each of the categories that we went over under the eligible activities. How much did you spend on work? How much you spent on workplace safety measures? How much you spent on market pivots, retrofitting facilities, additional transportation, worker housing, or health services? And that's going to total down here under total funding. Here is a closer look at that. And here I just entered some sample figures. Let's say this fictional organization spent $750 purchasing reusable masks for their workers. They spent $5,000 to develop an online sales platform. And so that totals down here as $5,750. And then it totals the actual costs incurred as well. And once you filled all that in, you check the boxes to attest that your organization meets the business size standards, that you incurred these costs between January 27th, 2020 and December 31st, 2021, and no other federal funds were used to cover the cost of the activity or activities. And then you certify that these statements are true. And I'm assuming your name is going to show up on this drop-down menu if you listed your name in the first page. Don't forget to check the I'm not a robot box. And then I believe you can click confirm. And I am pretty sure that's the end. I want to clarify that I did not actually submit an application, so I don't know what happens past the confirm button. So Felicity, any comments?
No comments.
Okay. I also want to take a moment to go through the FAQs because there's a lot of really good information there. From this homepage, you can find, there's tabs up at the top right, and there are frequently asked questions, which have some really useful resources. So I believe in our last session, somebody asked if this was taxable. Yes, federal grants are considered income. However, nonprofit organizations are generally exempt from federal income taxation. Other grant recipients may have to report this as taxable income. If you're a mixed crop producer, which NAICS code should you select? Again, choose that based on the primary activity of your operation, which is generally the activity that generates the most revenue for your business. If you're a farmer's market, you don't need to select an NAICS code. You simply select farmer's market from the drop-down menu. Also, meat processing and wholesale distributor does include bison, which could be meat processed from carcasses, packaged frozen food merchant wholesalers, or meat and meat product merchant wholesalers. When will the awards be issued? That is a question that many might be asking. And they said 7 to 8 weeks from the application deadline, which the deadline is November 22nd. So I estimate that applicants should hear something after January 10th, 7 weeks from November 22nd. But it could be later than January 10th, no earlier than January 10th. So take a look at the FAQ page because there's a lot of very useful information. I also want to point out that they have a help page that includes some video tutorials if you want to know more about Eligibility, there's a video tutorial on that. And if you want to know about applying for a DUNS number, they have provided a video tutorial on that as well. And you can find the links on the help page. We've also shared those on our Facebook event. And then I guess I will leave you with the information on where to find more information. Please send an email to, so that is on the help tab of the web page. Our support team, the USDA support team is available Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. Keep in mind that we're in the Central Time Zone, so that's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Central. And you can email them at usda.ams.prs@grantsolutions.gov or call 301-238-5550. Thank you for watching our webinar. I hope you apply for this grant if you're eligible, and I hope that this has been useful. So have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Stephanie.